And indeed, this is your election headquarters, Joy News. And news coming in, Accra High Court has adjourned hearing of a case involving the leader of the All People's Congress, Dr. Hassan Ayariga, and the Electoral Commission over his disqualification in the 2016 presidential race. The two parties have been ordered to file statement of case by Friday, 28th October, followed by oral argument on Monday, 31st October 2016. Dr. Ayariga is among 12 other presidential hopefuls whose nomination forms were rejected by the Electoral Commission for failing to adequately complete filing the forms as prescribed by the Constitution. Today's hearing comes a day after lawyers for PPP's flag bearer, Dr. Papakwesi Indum, faced lawyers of the Electoral Commission in court yesterday over a similar case. The High Court later fixed Friday, 28th of October to pass judgment. For the latest on the fate of Dr. Hassan Ayariga ahead of this presidential election, stay tuned to Joy News as we bring you up to scratch on today's hearings. I'm joined on the line now by our correspondent Joseph Akable. He's following this particular story. Joseph, tell us what actually happened in court today.
Well, so because there was quite a brief court hearing this morning. In fact, it's a bit different from the PPP case where the EC lawyer specifically requested for an abridgment of time, which as it were will ensure that the matter will be heard early. In this case, the judge on her own, Justice Tete Chawe on her own, decided to grant an abridgment of time. Directed further that the various parties should by Friday present the abridgment of case to the court, after which on Monday they will come before her to make oral arguments. He also mentioned that within the course of that week, he also deliver her on the substantive matter. So that was a brief proceedings. Dr. Hassan Ayariga himself was in court in the company of his running mate, Emmanuel Kalbatels, as well as Party General Secretary Azakopo.
So, Joseph, let me get it clearly. On what basis did the court decide to adjourn the case?
The adjournment was done in order to allow the parties to be able to file their statement of case by Friday, so that on Monday they will make their oral argument. And that is in line directly from the Chief Justice that they want the trial or any matter relating to electoral to be heard in a timely manner. So it is in line with that the court has decided that instead of coming every day and making arguments and delaying, why not file it quickly so that we'll come on Monday, we make oral arguments, after which I'll fix a date to deliver judgment. And
how did the parties react to the orders of the court?
For Dr. Hassan Ayariga's legal team, led by Maxwell Logan, they are saying that they are waiting, they are excited by the directive, in fact, and they are hoping to come back next week because they have the view that Hassan Ayariga has been unfairly disqualified. They want him reinstated in the race, and they can't wait to make those legal arguments in court. I also interacted with Hassan Ayariga himself after hearing, and he also made a point again that he is not happy about his disqualification. He again added that many Ghanaians are disappointed in the EC's decision to disqualify not just him, but the other candidate, because it limits the number of candidates that Ghanaians have an opportunity to choose from. And in that regard, he can't wait for his lawyer to present his case in court, and he's hoping that he'll get a ruling in his favor.
Thank you very much, Joseph Akable, our reporter in court. And of course, we'll bring you more on this particular story in our subsequent bulletins. Now, the ruling NDC says it will arrest and prosecute former Energy Minister and MP for Adansiaskwa K.T. Hammond in his role in the sale of Ghana's drill ship soon as he loses his parliamentary seat in elections this year. A government white paper on a report presented by the Judgment Debt Commission directed IOCO to get Mr. Hammond to account for the difference of $900,000 which went untraced following the sale of the drill ship for $24 million to defray a $19.5 million debt owed SG Bank. The latter has since sued government to prevent IOCO's investigations. But speaking at the launch of an outreach program for voter caucus nationwide at Fumso in the Ashanti region, General Secretary of the NDC, Johnson Esiedun Ketia, dropped hint government is waiting for Mr. Hammond to lose his seat to face arrest and prosecution. Love FM's Rasta Sasaridonko reports.
It was a gathering of Voltarians from various parts of Ghana to inaugurate a special door-to-door campaign to increase the gains of the NDC in settler communities in the Ashanti region, held in K.T. Hammond's constituency at Dansi Asokwa. Speakers, including General Secretary of the NDC, Johnson Esiedun Ketia, dwelled on increasing the votes of the president and removing the sitting MP. He told the Dansi Asokwa MP the drill ship saga will be revisited once he loses his seat this year.
Retirement. Okodu retirement numua. Ansana ne obetono no. We are friends say o mechire baby address no.
K.T. Hammond is going on retirement, and before he gets his peace, we'll arrest him and ask him to show us where the drill ship is. He should not be comfortable with the immunity he's enjoying as an MP.
I feel way there. Obe free parliament ho. O free ho so a. Ya che no bisa no say drill ship no.
Deputy Regional Minister Andy Osei Okra assured supporters of the NDC in settler communities any attempt to intimidate them will be quelled by the use of the security agencies.
Security is in charge. We are in charge of our security here. Nobody should prevent you or just push you to the wall that don't come and vote. Come out and vote. Nobody will do anything to you. We'll make sure that you have enough security to come out.
Reporting for Joy News, Erastus Asaredonko, Love FM, Kumasi.
Now, Ghanaians traveling to China, Sudan, Cuba, Seychelles and Turkey would not be needing visas to do that anymore in the near future. The soon-to-be visa-free country trip is part of an agreement Ghana is making with these countries contained in a document currently before Parliament for consideration. Nationals of the said countries would also enjoy same to Ghana. But how soon is the near future and what is informing this move in the first place? With me in the studio to shed some light on this development is the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliament, Emmanuel Kwesi-Bendua, who actually raised the issue on the floor of Parliament. Good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining us on Newsdesk.
Thank you. It's my pleasure being here.
Great. So why has this become necessary?
Well, first of all, let me clarify this situation. That the waiver of visa requirements are in respect of specific particular passports. That is in the case of all the other countries except Turkey. Turkey is only for diplomatic passports, and then Seychelles is for all passports. But for all the other countries, China, Cuba, Sudan, is for holders of diplomatic and service passports. So it's not for all Ghanaians.
Okay, so make that point again. Apart from Turkey?
In the case of Turkey, it's only holders of diplomatic passports.
Okay.
Who have that visa requirement applying to them.
Okay.
And then in the case of
China and the rest?
In the case of Seychelles, it's for all passports.
It's for all passports,
yes.
For Seychelles?
Yes.
And then for China, is also for diplomatic?
For China, Sudan, and Cuba is for diplomatic and service passports.
Why these differences?
Well, that's the agreement that has been entered into with the various countries. In fact, the matter was raised on the floor of the House, particularly in the case of Turkey, where we realized that Ghana has a lot of trading relationship with them, but it's only for diplomatic passports. And the minister made it very clear that it's only an initial arrangement, and then in future, it may be possible to extend the waiver to other passports.
So we are talking about future. How soon is that?
That I cannot say, but it depends on how we manage our situation in the country.
So you're saying that for Seychelles and Turkey, for instance, where it applies to all passports?
No, in the case of Seychelles, it applies to all passports.
All passports.
Yes.
It's because of the trade relationship that Ghana has with...
Not necessarily. It's to apply to trade relations and to facilitate and improve upon the relationship between Ghana and those countries.
But you also bear in mind that in China, there are a lot of Ghanaians who also do business. So why only restrict it to diplomatic, those with...
Diplomatic and service
Exactly,
yes.
Yes.
But that was the initial agreement that was sent into with the two countries And that was the understanding that was arrived at between our mission, our foreign ministry, and that country. But if we realize that, or if it becomes necessary, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs may enter into further consultations with the government of China, and if it's agreeable, they may extend the waiver of visa requirements to the other passports.
So these different agreements that have been made, when did our government sign these agreements with these respective countries?
In fact, they were signed at various times, and if I want to be specific,
Sure.
with Sudan, it was signed on the 20th of August.
This year?
2014. Seychelles, it was signed in May 2014. Cuba in October 2014, and with Turkey in March 2011.
So these were signed in different years, like you're saying,
Yes,
different
years,
different times. Why, somebody would ask, why this time?
Normally, it's a process. But though I can see that it's taking too long a time, yet once it's signed, it has got to go through a process. It has to go to cabinet for cabinet approval before it's brought to Parliament for ratification by Parliament. But as to the delay in pushing the process through, we all noticed it on the floor of the House and we raised it. But I cannot say specifically why the delay.
So let's, I was reading about it a bit and I realized that it is reported that the minister, Hannah Tetteh, actually said that this was going to be a win-win situation. How do we ensure that Ghana mutually benefits from these agreements that we've signed?
Well, once the agreements are in place, I mean, each country will benefit because in the first place, it will facilitate the entry of particular officials from one country to the other, because we may not need to go through the long process of acquiring visas. And further to that, you know, it entails a lot of giving out the visas. The consular officers too will be free. They will have sufficient time to work on other things. So that's the way it will benefit. But there will not be any direct financial gains as such. Neither does it impose any direct financial obligations on any of the countries.
Have we considered whether, you know, right now we talked about Seychelles, where it applies to all passports. Have we thought about extending this particular agreement to the other countries, where it only applies to diplomatic passports, those who are holding diplomatic passports?
I think we're looking at that, the ministry is looking at that, but for now, that is what we have in place. But I think in the future, if it becomes necessary, I think that once consultations are entered into with the other countries, it may be possible to extend it to all the other visas.
Now, let's talk about something that, of course, we even beyond this passport thing, we've been talking about the fact that some Ghanaian youth who think that there's no job in this country, or they think that greener pastures are outside the country, would want to go anyway. Putting these arrangements in place, aren't you concerned that it could rather worsen the case where, you know, the government of Ghana has trained professionals and they end up going to other countries because they think the conditions there are better?
In fact, that is the more reason why the extensions are given to only diplomatic and service passports, because those ones are well controlled and monitored. And it's only in the hands of officials and diplomats. So in future, if it becomes necessary to extend it to the other passports, then maybe necessary to take a critical look at passport situation, particularly the issuance of passports, to ensure that passports are given to only those whose background is well investigated and found out that they will not abuse the system.
How will that work?
It will work because normally when passports are given out, they are given out to people who believe are credible. And then there are legal sanctions where maybe some of these rules and regulations that are put in place are violated. So if the sanctions are applied strictly, I believe that it will work.
So does it mean that after we've firmed up these agreements, for instance, if you're Ghanaian, in case it applies to all passports and you're going out, you could be given, say, a year or two, after which, when you've breached it, you'll be sanctioned? Is that what you're saying?
Normally what happens is that even in these agreements, you only give the agreement for a period of time. It's for 90 days. And then after that, you may have to apply for immigration permits if you want to continue to stay there. And in any case, the agreements are also very flexible to the extent that any country can decide to restrict entry into its own country if it considers you to be a persona non grata, or if it feels that you may breach its security system. And that can be done instantly. And then they can also suspend or abrogate the agreement. They only have to notify the other country.
Meaning that if the other country feels that Ghana is abusing the system,
yes,
okay, they could abrogate the contract.
Yes. And it does not impose any financial any obligation. In fact, they're not creating rights or obligations on international law. So that maybe if anybody abrogates the agreement, you can take the person on. It's only a mutual agreement between the two parties. So that if there are any problems, it can only be resolved through negotiation or through diplomatic channels.
So is this going to work like it's happening in the West African sub-region where I can travel to Nigeria without a visa? How will it work in terms of these foreign, faraway countries? It
will work because once the agreements has been ratified and the processes have been completed, once you are going there, you don't have any problem.
So the process would almost be like I'm traveling to Nigeria where I don't require a visa.
That is so.
But how sure are we that there will be no restrictions?
Because the agreement does not impose any restrictions. Where the agreement imposes any restrictions, then the restriction will apply. But so far, the agreement does not impose any restrictions.
And so, for instance, if Parliament ratifies this agreement that has been signed already, and I want to travel to Seychelles, and I go to the embassy and I'm being told I'm facing difficulties, how do I deal with it?
You don't need to go to the embassy. You only have to pick your passport and go to Seychelles. Because that is the situation. And both countries recognize it. Unless, of course, there's some particular reason why they don't want to enter their country, you are free to go in there. I don't think you have any problems.
Have we also considered the negative impacts these agreements could have on the country?
Well, for everything that we do on this side, there are both sides, the negative and the positive. So if you look at all sides of it.
So, for instance, let's talk about trade, where it's been a major factor, the reason we are considering these things. And Ghana, we are not producing a lot of things. Aren't we concerned that it would lead to, opening our door so wide that people are importing all sort of things or exporting all sort of things into the country when from our side, we only send raw materials?
We have rules and regulations in the country, and those rules and regulations will apply. So if the government wants to restrict the importation of something in the country, it has the right so to do.
Beyond this trade issue, what are some of the negative, implications that your ministry or the committee thought of before, thinking of ratifying this in Parliament? What did you see?
Well, the negative implications might be if the diplomatic passport, for instance, gets into wrong hands, right? So it should be properly controlled and monitored so that, there are periods of time when you may have to surrender your diplomatic passport, particularly if you are an official and you are no more in that office, you have to surrender it. So in some instances, it is the duty of the foreign ministry to ensure that all such passports are properly monitored, controlled, and retrieved when it becomes necessary.
And this is actually very interesting. It brings me to my next point. How have we tightened our passport security issues? Because you're aware that there have been complaints of Nigerians having Ghanaian passports and even people who are not on the diplomatic list who have diplomatic passports.
A lot of processes are now in place to ensure that these things are controlled. In fact, for instance, we want even to introduce a situation where passport can be applied online to facilitate the acquisition of passports, and then the production and giving out passport will be under strict interviews. And then when these are gone through, I think for everything there can be weaknesses anyway, but over time, I think that we shall be able to plug many of the loopholes that make people come have access to passports when they are not entitled to, particularly for diplomatic and service passports.
And are you saying that these processes are already in place?
They are in place. The ministry is working at it.
Because recently, I had an interview with somebody who has been in the UK almost all her adult life, wanting to get a passport, renew her passport, went to the passport office, met somebody, an official in uniform, who demanded money before that would be done. And so it looks like the system is not really working as it should. You must know somebody. If you don't know anybody, you go and join the queue. And if you know somebody and you're not so, credible, you could be given the passport. How are you dealing with that to ensure that whether or not you know somebody, the system is working?
In fact, in every situation, there are balance. So what is being done and what is being contemplated at the moment is that maybe there will be the need to reshuffle the staff regularly, so that one does not stay too long on a particular schedule. Maybe even transfer them out of the passport office to other areas, so that it is that familiarity that brings that sort of situation where people are corrupted easily will be done away with.
I know Parliament is looking at ratifying this, and like I said, you raised this issue on the floor of Parliament yesterday. How soon do you envisage this would be done?
In fact, we have ratified
so that I
it.
can go to Seychelles anytime.
We have ratified it, but it's left with other administrative and legal procedures that will have to be entered into, and that will take a little time. But
Like,
for the time frame, I'm not in a position to say right away. Because I don't know how long it will take for the ministry to complete the other processes that may make it, that may operationalize the whole process.
okay, so after it's done, how do I get to know?
I think it will be published, the
Right.
publication.
Any other thing you want to say, sir?
For now, I just want to thank you so much for the interview and to encourage all persons that the Passport Office, particularly the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is working very hard to ensure that the issuance of passports are made very easy, and all Ghanaians who are entitled to and want to have passports will have access to it.
Thank you very much. And we just finished having this conversation with Emmanuel Kwesi Bandua. He is the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee in Parliament, and we're talking about passports and visas. The fact that very soon, traveling to China and Seychelles, you will not need visas. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. You're still here on News Desk on Joy News on Multi TV. Stay with us. When we come back, we'll bring you some other stories that you need to know in the next 30 minutes. Just so here on News Desk on Joy News on Multi TV, let's tell you about the stories. And Transport Minister Fifi Kwete is hopeful that ferry operations along the Volta Lake could reduce fatalities which have characterized lake transport in recent times. He says some private boat operators who ignored safety precautions have contributed to the loss of lives. He assured that the provision of 2 additional ferries from Senchi to Yeji and Dambai will largely reduce the incidence of fatalities on the Volta Lake.
The minister made these remarks after inspecting work on the ferries MV Senchi and MV Akrade, which are being dismantled to be reassembled at Akosombo before continuing to their respective destinations. Dismantling of the ferries has become necessary due to the Akosombo Dam, which will make passage to Yeji and Dambai impossible. Though this is long in coming, Fifi Kwete maintains it will help solve several challenges facing communities along the lake. Joy News in July reported on the sorry state of 14 million euros worth of ferries, which were at the mercy of the weather at Senchi. The Transport Ministry later, through procurement process, saw Seaworld Engineering Limited, a local company, emerge among its international competitors to undertake the 8.7 million Ghana cedi contract of dismantling and reassembling. According to Fifi Kwete, one of the ferries will be operational in the coming weeks between Yeji and Makango.
Apologies for the poor quality of that visuals there, but you're still here on News Desk on Joy News and Multi TV. Stay with us. We'll come back shortly. Now, the Department of Political Science and at the University of Ghana, in collaboration with the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, is holding a roundtable conference on what they call expanding the frontiers of electoral politics in Ghana ahead of the 2016 general elections. Speakers at the conference include Professor Adebayo Olukushi, who is the director at Africa Region International IDEA, Professor Emmanuel Deborah, Dr. Mame Jeche Jando, Dr. Bosman Asare, Mr. Alex Rimpon, and Professor Ransford Jampo, all of whom are political scientists. Let's take a live feed from the University of Ghana, where the event is happening now.
We have 5 presenters and 1 omnibus discussant. Sorry, 2 discussants, yes. They are Professor Abeku Isman Johnson, well known by student of the Department of Political Science and by the university in general, our long-serving methodology master, our long-serving refugee teacher, and I pray he doesn't become a refugee himself. And so he will be the discussant for the first 3 papers I hope you are clapping for the fact that he won't be a refugee. Yeah, because he knows all the nuances and all the dynamics and all the tricks in the refugee world that it will be useless for him to be a refugee. He knows how to dodge. And so, he will take charge of the first 3 presentations. The first one, the political, economic, and social context of the 2016 general elections in Ghana, Professor Emmanuel Debra. The second one, key campaign issues that are of critical interest to Ghanaian voters, by Professor Ransford Jampo. Then the third one, the different political parties, presidential candidates, and their political platforms, by the HOD, Dr. Bosman E. Asari.
Yes, Desk on Joy News on Multi TV, but of course we're taking the live feed from the University of Ghana, where a group of political scientists are going to discuss the electoral system ahead of the December polls. With just 41 days to the elections.